And we are going live. And it should just take a couple of seconds, and we should be good. Excellent. Yes, we are live. Hello, 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 everyone. Apologies for the delay. We had a little bit of a technical glitch. And yay, so we have some people. Hi from Switzerland. Wonderful. Hi from Belfast. Hello, hello,
Hey.
hello. Hi, good. Good to see everyone. So I'm very excited to welcome today with me sleep neuroscientist, adjunct professor at IE Business School in Madrid, lecturer at St. Gallen and IMD Business Schools, keynote speaker and international recognized authority on sleep, Dr. Els van der Helm. Els, very warm welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you. So Els has been named by Thrive Global as one of the top 5 sleep experts in the world. She advises corporations around the globe on sleep, performance, and well-being, supports CEOs and decision makers worldwide to help them get the best out of themselves, their teams, and their organizations. She began her career in sleep during her master in neuroscience degree, studying the effect of sleep on cognitive performance at the Netherlands Institute of Neurosciences and Harvard Medical School. She studied the effect of sleep on the brain and performance as a Fulbright scholar during her PhD in psychology at the University of California, Berkeley, before making a switch to a corporate career at McKinsey & Company as a management consultant. She's based in Lucerne, Switzerland, and works with companies across the globe. So today we're going to speak about sleep and technology. And for those who don't know me, my name is Dr. Anastasia Dedyukhina. I run the network of digital well-being coaches, Consciously Digital. And what we do, we help individuals and companies develop healthier digital habits. So today I'm looking forward to having a discussion at the intersection of technology and sleep and technology. Is it good? Is it bad? Can we even qualify this in these terms? Or everything is not so straightforward. So, Els, how are you? Did you have a good sleep?
I did, although my kids did wake up in the middle of the night once and I had to get up. They are now 3 and 4, so this is usually quite rare. And then when it happens, you're like, oh yeah, this is being woken up in the middle of the night. But I'm good. I had enough total sleep time at least.
Sounds good. So my first question to you, as a neuroscientist, as somebody who works with executives and with people all around the world, do you think our sleep patterns have changed as a result of us introducing more and more digital technologies in our lives?
Yeah, it's a good question. There's a little bit of controversy there where kind of one camp says, look, we're definitely sleeping, 1 or 2 hours less than we did maybe 50 years ago. And another camp saying, actually, it's not that bad. We don't seem to be sleeping that much less. And the debate comes from just not having actually really good data on this. So it's a little hard to say. I would think that technology definitely plays a role there. I mean, if I just try to imagine, right, 50 years ago, where there were no laptops, mobile phones, maybe you didn't even watch that much TV in the evening. What was there to do in the evening, right? Like not much to keep you up and awake and alert and engaged and entertained. So I can imagine that you just went to bed earlier because there wasn't much else to do. And there definitely wasn't as much work-related interruptions in your evening as a knowledge worker. So I find it really hard to believe that 50 years ago, it was the same way. And I do think it's helpful to kind of imagine that world, right? To kind of think about that. What was it like for our grandparents in the evening? And I think we all kind of think, oh my God, that sounds so boring. And it does. But I actually think that there's a lot of benefit and use to being bored every now and then. There was just an HBR article on this the other day that came out about the importance of being bored during the day. And I would say, for creativity and problem solving and stress reduction, but I would say it's just as important to be bored in the evening and to allow yourself to get sleepy and get ready for bed.
That's great insight. Yeah, that's actually one of the things that we teach in Conscious to Digital certification course, that boredom is okay. If you're a parent, one of the skills to teach your kids is that being bored is okay. You don't have to rush to the gadget. And it's interesting that it is also related to our sleep. Now, probably one of the most frequent things that people do is taking their phones to their bedrooms. And I know there has been a study by Harvard Medical School that if you keep your phone next to your bed, even if it's on the airplane mode, it still kind of puts your brain in the state of alert. So it's similar. I usually explain that it is similar to leaving your door open. So you can kind of sleep, but still part of your attention is allocated to monitoring what's going on. So could I ask you a little bit more about that? Is that always a problem when you have your phone in your bedroom?
It's a good question. And I would say the answer is not necessarily. So I would, if I don't know who I have in front of me, I would definitely advocate to say, think about leaving your phone out of your bedroom completely. Because we do see that, people who are using their phone in the hour before they go to bed tend to also have more sleep difficulty. And this is both self-reported use as well as actual use. It does depend what you're doing on your phone, most likely. So that's another important thing to think about. So in general, my advice is, get some of this boredom. Try to not kind of need the stimulation right before you go to bed. However, there are instances where maybe I would actually advise you to use your phone. And this is mostly for people who tend to ruminate. So who kind of, think back of their day, start to become anxious, maybe also depressed in the evening. And this anxiety can actually create more arousal, more stress hormones, and then hurt our ability to fall asleep. So I think it depends a little bit on what you're doing instead. If instead of using the phone, you're going to be anxious, then it's better to use the phone, especially if the phone use leads to you becoming more relaxed. And there's some danger in that, because if you look at the data, most people say that they use their phone as a sleep aid. But if you look at the data, you also see that for most people, this is not the case. But there's definitely exceptions where if you're dealing with anxiety or other things and you haven't been able to deal with it during the day, and it's not something that you can write in your journal for 5 to 10 minutes and kind of be okay with it, then indeed it might be better for you to use the phone as a way to relax and reduce anxiety and thereby actually help your sleep. So there's no hard and fast rule on, no way, don't have your phone or don't look at it right before bed.
Thank you for sharing. What about the blue light? So there's lots of research around blue light, either delaying, postponing, or inhibiting melatonin production. So melatonin, your hormone of sleep. But I know also that's not exactly always the case, right? So not every blue light is bad.
Yeah. So, I think it's really important, this discussion, I think, is sometimes simplified a bit too much, and then it suddenly seems like different experts are saying different things. So what's really important when you have this discussion is to kind of define blue light, because blue light in and by itself is not necessarily that harmful. It really depends on the brightness of the light. So those two things combined will determine what the impact is on you. But if you have bright and more bluish light, then this can definitely indeed shift your circadian rhythm. So that means that you might have a harder time falling asleep that very same night. You might not, but maybe you actually feel the impact more the next day or the day after that. So it's kind of hard to study these things in detail because often these studies are done on healthy young individuals who tend to be quite sleep deprived in general. Often these studies are done on just one single night of sleep. Often these studies are done just looking at the time it takes for someone to fall asleep, which is not always actually the best measure to look at. Even sleep medication doesn't improve time to fall asleep that much. So you might say, well, it only takes people 8 more minutes to fall asleep. Is that really an issue? Just go look at your phone. But actually, there's other measures that you should be looking at, such as heart rate, core body temperature, stages of sleep, and indeed how they feel the next morning, how they perform the next morning, and how they sleep the next night. So that's a bit kind of my issue with a lot of these studies. Of course, it's hard to kind of look at all of that. And then the other thing to think about is that there's huge individual differences in our sensitivity to light. So these are up to 50-fold, 50. That, of course, is another huge factor that plays into all of these different studies. If we don't know your individual sensitivity to light, it's also hard to see, well, what does this device and looking at this device do for you when everybody's already so different to kind of start with from baseline. And it's not that easy to measure someone's individual sensitivity to light because you need to put them in a dark room and measure their melatonin levels. So this all goes to say that in general, it's going to be really hard to give a specific piece of advice to an individual. But if you want to be safe, you definitely want to dim the lights, actually already starting about 3 hours before you go to bed. Of course, dimming it 1 hour before bed is better than not dimming it at all. And reducing the blueness of the light. So it's this dimming, it's reducing the blueness of the light. And the other thing that actually has a really big impact that we've only figured out more recently is how much light you're getting during the day. So the more bright light you get during the day, the less sensitive you are to light in the evening. So a farmer who works outside all day can probably look at their iPad in the evening on full brightness without it having much of an impact, whereas most people spend more than 90% of their day inside, not getting anywhere near as bright light as people do outside. And then our biological clock becomes really sensitive to this bright light in the evening because it hasn't had it yet during the day. So it's kind of looking to see what time of the day is it? And it's a bit unsure when your whole day was spent indoors in an office. And then when you suddenly give it that bright light in the evening, it's going to say, oh, well, now it looks like noon. This looks really bright. Apparently, we're not going to sleep for like another 10 hours. So yeah, that's why all of this, very quickly becomes much more nuanced. But I would say I definitely try to pay attention to this. And, right now it's summer in Europe and it can be quite hard to dim the lights 3 hours before you go to bed. So we tend to actually close our blinds around like 7 p.m. or so. We do still watch TV, but we dim the lights because it's not just about the light from the devices, right? You have to think about your bathroom light or your fridge light, or there's lots of lights everywhere in your house that can be quite bright. So yeah, it's helpful to think about, especially if you don't spend that much time during the day outside.
What about electromagnetic fields? Is this a kind of mumba yumba belief, or is there something behind it that actually, like, if you're sleeping, if your router is on, Wi-Fi router is on, then your sleep gets impacted, that if your phone is next to your bed, then it emits some electromagnetic fields that interfere with your sleep, that if there is wire somewhere like behind your bed, it also impacts it, or is it not scientifically proven?
It's not scientifically proven. I think if it would be there, it must be very small. And I think it's much better to worry about other things than those electromagnetic waves, because they have not been scientifically proven to negatively impact sleep quality. So I would say really think much more about the phone itself and where it is, because as you said, just having it near you, the fact it's associated with so much stimulation. I sometimes joke that I don't think I would be, doing this job and having this business if it wasn't for smartphones that people all put on their nightstand. It's kind of a recipe for either insomnia or at least kind of more restless sleep and feeling more tired the next day. And the people who I meet who don't have their phone in their bedroom, it's really funny. You should ask people. And the people who don't have it, they swear by it. They're like, I don't get these other people who have it in the bedroom. And I can really relate to that. I did have it in the bedroom when I was breastfeeding my kids, because I was like, timing it. And then after I was done actually with the breastfeeding, I kept the phone in the room for quite a while. And it was really this moment at some point where I was like, why is this phone still here? And it was still there because I got used to charging it overnight on my nightstand. And it was like, okay, let's do what I tell everybody else. Put your phone charger outside of your bed. And then it becomes the routine to charge it elsewhere. So I can really relate to this habit. And I think it can be very comforting to know that if you wake up in the middle of the night, you don't have to be bored. But then I think it kind of comes back to embracing a little bit of boredom.
I think there is a bigger argument here, at least when I speak to people, the argument, what if something happens? It's
right. If someone
especially,
needs to call you in the middle of the
somebody
night.
needs to call me at 3 a.m. and it is a false argument, right? Because, what are you going to be? A, you can still leave your phone in the other bedroom and you will hear that.
Yes.
B, like you can have, a spare phone for emergency where like 2 or 3 people who need to have your emergency number would call you. And honestly, you're not going to be very helpful at 3 a.m. anyways.
I know. I would say the exact same things. Luckily, you now have the do not disturb mode so that if you leave it on in the middle of the night, but indeed, I would say do that in a different bedroom, you could at least select the few people that can get through. But indeed, how often has that happened? And is it worth the potential use you're going to be between 3 to 7 a.m. Versus the trade-off of hurting your sleep quality every single night?
I want to talk a little bit about actually what specifically we do on the phones that does hurt our sleep. And one of the studies I want to mention here is this impact of social media on circadian rhythms. So which actually show that the more time a person spends on social media, the more likely they are to delay their sleep. And in principle, it does interfere with circadian rhythm. It's this actually expectation that, somebody might be waiting for you to reply or to say something that, forces you, like what if, this FOMO, right? The fear of missing out, and which stems really from a very big need of belonging. Yeah, that's not a bug, it's a feature. But we somehow misinterpret that. Do you have any recommendations for that? Because it's very difficult to ride on the willpower, right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, and I would say it's even more than FOMO, right? It's also, I think, just what you're doing on the phone and how much interaction it requires. We see that the more interactive devices lead to people going to bed later versus more passive. So this really comes back to reviewing what you're doing on the phone in the evening and thinking about, is it making me more alert and awake, or is it helping me reduce stress and maybe actually relax and get sleepy? But indeed, what kind of happens with, of course, a lot of apps, I mean, Netflix is designed to do this with this auto loop, is to keep you there and to keep you so engaged that you don't even notice that you're getting sleepy. And at the same time, you just continue to watch, and we call the sleep displacement, where you just keep watching longer or interacting and thereby delaying your sleep time. And I think here the advice would be, in addition to reviewing what am I doing in the evening, to also set a goal for yourself as to how long you'll be using the device, and set a timer for when you want to stop using it. Turn off Netflix auto loop or autoplay, so that you don't as easily get into this loop. And I think it really helps to have, kind of one activity that you really like, that you do right before you go to bed, that you like enough that you will actually stop Netflix and do the other activity, so that you can ease into sleep, but maybe still, have your relaxation time before that. So I personally always write in my journal for about 5 to 10 minutes once I'm actually in bed. I just write about my day. Sometimes I really write about, frustrations I've had or conflict I had. I actually try to kind of get the negative stuff up so that it's out before I lie down and close my eyes. And then I like reading for about 5 to 10 minutes. So this isn't, let me finish this book because I think it's so interesting. This is, I'm going to read until I get so sleepy that I would rather close the book and go to sleep. So I use the book really as a sleep aid, not as another activity to kind of dive into for another 30 to 60 minutes.
I'm nodding because that's exactly what I do. So I reread the books before sleep. So books that I already know the content. So my brain doesn't need to work too much. I lost about 2 pages and get knocked out. And I do something similar, but I actually write 10 things I'm grateful for on that day.
That's also been scientifically proven to help you shorten the time that it takes you to fall asleep.
Yeah, and usually by number 8, I'm already like snoring, and it does help reduce stress as well. So pick either one of those. Yeah, like either complain to paper or
yes, exactly.
or like what you wish you had done. One of the exercises that actually we give to so we're running the attention detox 5-day challenge. One of the exercises that we give to the participants, we ask them to write everything they wish they had done that day, but they did not. So kind of flatten out the frustration there, or just anything that went wrong. I do find it helps also to finish on the positive note. Okay, then I'm quite curious about this very big growing part of our lives is measuring sleep. And I must say I'm biased here. Yeah, I'm all about like, so my bias is I'm all about natural. Yeah, I think that we have fantastic inbuilt systems. I know if I slept well. Yeah, like if I'm in touch with my body, I wake up in the morning, like I know if it was enough. And the device can tell me that I slept well, but I know it myself. And in fact, when I tried measuring my sleep several times, I did personally feel that this was interfering. So I felt observed. And then I read very interesting research that basically spoke about the experiment when scientists asked people to measure their sleep using bracelets and then mix the results. So they told people who, according to the bracelets, slept well, that they didn't sleep well, and vice versa. And they were asked later to do different tests, and basically people who were lied to and who were told that they didn't sleep well, although in fact they did, behaved exactly as somebody would behave if they didn't have a good sleep. Which basically tells you that if your device, if you blindly trust your device, and if it's not very accurate, then you're actually allowing yourself to, to be lied to and to overrun your own body signals. So my question is there actually value in measuring your sleep? Or is it like overhyped market?
Well, I mean, to start off, I agree with everything you just said. I think you're very capable of noticing yourself, whether or not you had a good night of sleep. And I think when you've had a bad night of sleep, definitely don't look at the output of the device, because it's not really going to help you in any way. I do wear a sleep tracker. I wear an Oura ring. And the reason that I like tracking my sleep, well, first of all, I should maybe say that the sleep stages is where they're most fuzzy and the least accurate. So always take the actual stage data with, a big grain of salt, or it just changes algorithm. And I don't know, I think my deep sleep got cut in half or something, right? Which also makes sense. They're not on your brain. It's hard to know what sleep stage you were in. But even if I would know my sleep stages, based on science, I wouldn't even be able to do much with that, because we just don't have the science to do much with even highly accurate sleep data. So where I find the sleep tracker actually much more useful is looking at heart rate and heart rate variability as measurements of how well you've recovered. And I really like that because it basically takes into account how much you've exercised in the last couple of days, and then looks at your sleep and then basically tells you, well, today is a really good day for exercise and pushing yourself, or actually maybe today, don't push yourself so much. And you could say, well, you can probably feel that as well. But I have, and that data is really accurate, the heart rate and heart rate variability. And that's something I find a little bit harder to feel or sense myself. So I kind of like that, maybe because I'm also ambitious with exercise, and sometimes it's helpful if a tracker says, actually today, take it slow, don't push yourself. The other thing that it does really well is track core body temperature. And that was helpful during Corona. But it's also helpful as a woman because you can really see your menstrual cycle in it. And it really made me realize how much worse I sleep in 2 weeks out of my cycle when my core body temperature is higher. And we've known that for a long time from research, but I don't know, I just never seen it that clearly in my own data. I mean, I haven't been like tracking it with a diary or something. So there, it's been really helpful. And I would say other areas where and I think also my clients have found it helpful is that it can very precisely tell you when you've had alcohol, when you went to bed late, when you had a late dinner, which also, you don't need a device to tell you that. But the fact that it can see it mostly in your heart rate data, I think can be a really big motivator to cut back on alcohol, to cut back on late night meals, and to keep a much more steady sleep rhythm. So, it might seem a little silly to use this as kind of an extra motivator, but I think sometimes, we only change what really gets measured, they say. So in that sense, I think it can be helpful, but it can also completely backfire, particularly for people who are worried about their sleep or anxious about getting good sleep. There, I would say, well, how is this device really going to help you? I'm not sure that it will.
Yeah, we have a question. I'm not sure what that is, but somebody is asking you, what do you think about solfeggio frequencies? Does it tell you anything?
No. Let me see if I can see.
Solfeggio frequencies.
I have never heard of this. So now maybe teach me something new.
We have no idea if the person who asked it wants to elaborate a little bit in the comments. We'll make sure. Okay, so we have just a couple of more minutes left. Maybe I'll ask about any specific advice for parents, technology, kids. One of the things that we see in our work, for instance, that most kids actually these days very sleep deprived.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do put them to bed earlier, 1 hour to bed, 2 hours earlier, then actually they become much more manageable, much more agreeable, and just things become much easier. And obviously, access to device is a big part of that, because, for instance, either child has their device in their bedroom and you can't control it. As a parent, like, chances are they're going to go to bed after midnight. Yeah, and they're waking up in the morning already not so fresh. Any tips on your side for parents?
So do you want to focus on teenagers?
I guess so. Yeah, I guess, like, in terms of like managing technology and sleep for
Yes.
and and if it does make a difference age-wise, right? Because teens in principle, they tend to be night owls.
Yeah, so I think it's good to know, right, that that is a biological phenomenon. Even if we'd be living in the Stone Ages, teenagers become really late. And there's several things that you can do to help your teenager. First, lobby for later school times. It's by far the most impactful change you can try to make in your teenager's life. And I think something many more adults should be aware of, that we're basically forcing these kids to get up at 5 a.m. in their biological time when maybe they're only getting up at 7 a.m. or 7:30. So that's really unhealthy and damaging their mental health, their physical health, their learning capacity. So I just want to put it out there. School times should be much later for teenagers. And we know from scientific studies that that really helps. It helps their grades, it helps their mental health, it even helps the teachers feeling better and happier. So that's one. Then the other one is, as much as you can, try to keep them on a steady rhythm, even on the weekend. So kind of regular wake up times. But then they likely do have to get extra sleep on the weekend. So preferably we don't do that at all and they get enough sleep during the week. But otherwise, if they can get up at roughly the same time, but instead, for instance, have a nap in the afternoon, then you can keep their circadian rhythm more similar. Get them as much bright light as early as possible in a day, because this is going to be a signal to their clock that the day has already started, and that will make them sleepier earlier in the evening. Really important, definitely for teenagers, is reducing this blue plus brightness of the light in the 3 hours before they go to bed. And yes, of course, also the use of technology for all the other reasons we described, that it makes you more alert, you get FOMO, and you don't feel that you're actually getting sleepy. So that those are important things. And we also see from studies where parents impose bedtimes and take away the technology in the evening, that it does really lead to these kids sleeping longer and better. So I can imagine, I don't have teenagers yet, but this is not an easy discussion. I definitely try with my 3 and 4-year-old to already get them clued into the importance of sleep, how it impacts them the next day, how harder it is to get out of bed, how much more depressed or anxious you might feel, to kind of explain that you understand the FOMO and the thrill and the anxiety that comes from putting these devices away. But I think it can really, really help. And maybe try to think with your teenager, what could be something that they can do instead that is relaxing, yet not so boring that they don't want to do it. Whether it's listening to music, drawing, painting, writing in a journal, reading a book, whatever they like to do, try to find something that you can work into their evening ritual that doesn't involve bright blue light and a lot of engagement and dopamine.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. If people want to know a little bit more about your work, what's the best way to learn about it or contact you?
My website, so elsvanderhelm.com, pretty straightforward. And I can advise you to follow me on LinkedIn. I post a lot there. I also have a newsletter that you can sign up through on my website, and a shorter one on LinkedIn.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much. Just before we close, I want to say one more thing. So you can all see me. Where am I? Here. So we run this month a 5-day attention detox challenge. So what it is, basically, we'll look at how technology is impacting our attention and how we can restore it. And one of the biggest things that we learn to do is how to take breaks. Breaks, 2 minutes breaks to restore your attention, or sleeping breaks, or whatever it is. It's specifically for trainers, coaches, and HR, so people who give to other people more and more. So have a look at that. It's a very fun, interactive, kind of game-like challenge with a little bit of elements of neuroscience. So check it out, and I hope to see you there. So thank you very much again, Els, Dr. Els.
Just Els.
And
Thank you for having me, Anastasia. This was fun.
thank you. Fantastic. So I'm going to stop